Check 1, 2. Check testing. Check, check. All right. Let's get the hair looking right. It's so off to one side. All right, there we go. There we go. Weird. All right. All right. Let's get going here. Gonna start in a minute. Get this show on the road. And let's see if the music comes through okay. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check test. Almost ready. If you were joining us live, give me 1 second. We'll get started. Just want to make sure the recording's good, because last time I did the masterclass, recording got jacked up and it was not fun. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check test. All right, sounds good. All right. Who wants to learn how to use synthesizers? You all do. I know you do, because you signed up. All right, let's do this thing, peoples. Check, check, 1, 2. All right, I think we're good. All right. Here we go. Welcome to how to use a synthesizer in your tracks and in your music. In this video, I'm going to go over, well, this course actually, I'm going to go over how to take a software synthesizer and show you how to use it, like what the controls actually mean in the synthesizer, and how to get cool, usable sounds that you can use in your music very easily, even if you've never used a synthesizer before. So let's open up the track here, or our music software. We're using Studio One, and I'm going to use software or a synthesizer in Studio One called MyTie. So if we go over here to Instruments, and we go under Personas, and we click MyTie and drag that into our project, we have this guy here. And this is the guy we are going to use for this session. All right, so what is a synthesizer? Basically, like what makes it up? A synthesizer just creates sound waves, and they could be waves that go like this, up and down, smooth, which is called a sine wave. It could make a sawtooth wave that goes like ding, 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 like this, up, down, like it's real sharp. And that just makes a different type of sound. There's a square wave. And basically what this software does is just produce that kind of thing. And each one of those things produced at the right frequency has a certain sound. Here's an example, instead of just me making hand motions like a goofball. Okay, so what I want you to do, if you are following along or you're watching this later and you're loading up MyTi in your own project, go to initialize, init down here. And by the way, we just opened a blank project in Studio One, so you just go to File, New, and then just hit OK from this screen here, and then you'll have this blank screen here, and that's where we pulled MyTi in. And if you want to look at the controls of MyTi, they're over here on this little piano icon on the left. Okay, so hit init, which stands for initialize the patch. And if you initialize the patch, let me turn my synthesizer on, my keyboard controller on here. This little guy. Ding, ding, ding. Okay. So once you have MyTi loaded up and you pick the initialize patch, you're going to hear what this one little saw wave sounds like, because that's the only thing that's activated when you initialize the patch. Nothing else is really activated. So all of these controls, which may seem kind of confusing, don't worry about them right now. We're going to do one little tiny piece at a time. This looks overwhelming, I know. And I always say in my courses, it looks overwhelming, I know, but that's a good thing because you have all these controls that you can grow into and learn. You don't need to know them all now. You don't need to know hardly any of them. In fact, if you wanted to make music, you have to know 0 of them. You could just go up to the top here and pick presets that the people at Presonus already made for the synthesizer, and you never have to turn one knob. But, whoa. Okay. But that's not what we're doing here. I'm going to basically show you what the knobs mean, so if you do want to get more creative, you can do it. So, all right. So I'm hearing a little knock, that's all. Okay. All right. Back to business. So I have my MIDI controller up here, my keyboard. And I could hit notes, and you should hear them. So just so you know, that's what a saw wave sounds like. So that's one of the examples I was talking about earlier. There's a smooth wave, there's a sawtooth wave. This is a smooth wave called a sine wave. Sounds much different, doesn't it? Here's a square wave. If you ever played like Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo, it's like very, very computer gamey saw waves. And those are basically what different waves sound like. So you can change the waveform with these 4 little things up here. There's a sine wave, saw wave. You don't even have to know the names of them. Just know that when you click one of these little boxes, it's going to change the way your sound is. That one there is a triangle wave, by the way. So think of a synthesizer as a thing that creates waves, and it creates them in such a frequency that it's audible. Your ears can hear that wave. That's all a synthesizer pretty much is, at least this type of synthesizer. So if we go to our synthesizer, let me explain kind of what's going on up here. You can see that everything else is kind of grayed out, all this stuff down here, and down here. It's not activated. The only thing that has like full color or is darker is these settings over here. And this is all in a section where it says OSC1. And I could turn off OSC1. If I click up there, then we're going to get no sound. The thing that makes the sound in a synthesizer is called an oscillator. OSC, ILLATOR. An oscillator, just like an oscillating fan. It goes like this. Did you ever see an oscillating fan go like this? All right, well, if an oscillating fan went like this fast enough at the right frequency, an oscillating fan would make noise that you could hear. That's what synthesizers do. They oscillate back and forth at such a degree that it creates a wave that has a sound. So whenever you see a synthesizer and it says OSC or oscillator 1, oscillator 2, just think of it as a sound generator. Sound generator 1, sound generator 2. The thing that's making the noise is an oscillator. And that's why I'm teaching it to you first, because it all starts with something making a sound. And then what happens to that sound is later, and we're going to go over that later. But the thing that makes the sound is called an oscillator, and you're going to have them on synthesizers. And some synthesizers have multiple oscillators, and you could combine them all to make different neat sounds. Like, let's look at my tie. Up here in the top left, we have OSC1, oscillator 1, and it's turned on. Well, this synthesizer, my tie, has 2 oscillators. And here's oscillator 2. I could turn that on. And now, it sounds different. All right, let's make oscillator 1 a saw wave, and let's make oscillator 2 the same exact thing. So here's oscillator 1 that's on, it's a saw wave. Here's oscillator 2 that's on, a saw wave. Now, because it's the same exact wave that we just created, and we just played 2 of them at the same time, it made it twice as loud. Simple, right? You have one oscillator playing one thing. You have a second oscillator playing the same exact thing. It just made it doubly as loud. That's all this one did. Now, most of the time when you're programming a synthesizer, you won't make the 2 oscillators do exactly the same thing. Like, one thing I could do for oscillator 2, possibly, is just tune it a little bit one way or tune it a little bit the other way. So it's just out of tune with the first oscillator. And you could do that with this fine setting here. Check this out. I'm going to play, both oscillators are on. I'm going to play a note, then I'm going to mess with this knob called fine tuning. Now here's how it sounds with that tuning on. Pretty neat, right? If I turn off oscillator 2, we got boring. Turn oscillator 2 on. So you see the fun you could have with 2 separate tone generators or sound generators, and you mix them up in different ways? That's what these oscillators are all about. Now, this big knob here on the oscillators is what octave it's playing. And the best way for me to describe that is just to turn the knob while I'm holding a note. I'm holding a note now. I'm going to turn the knob down. I'm going to turn the knob down again. I'm going to turn the knob back up, 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 up. So it just changes the octave of the note. So if we have oscillator 1 at this octave, which is 8, whatever that is, feet. I'm not sure what that actually means. And 4, now it sounds like that. Or if I make oscillator 2 16, it sounds like that, or 32. That's pretty fat. Too fat for chords, but it's cool for a bass. All right, I'll put it right back at 8. So They're both playing the same octave. So in your oscillator section on a synthesizer, you're going to have different things that affect the note of the sound, the tuning of that sound, how that sound is generated, whether it's a sine wave, whether it's a saw wave, whether it's a square wave. Let's make both oscillators square waves. Change it here. Now this is a square wave. Pretty neat, right? So that's oscillators in a nutshell. There's not much more to talk about in oscillators. It's just the thing that makes the noise. I'll talk about one more thing, actually. This one in particularly has where you could make one oscillator come out of your left ear and another oscillator come out of your right ear with this pan knob here. Here's how that sounds. You're not going to be able to hear that too good on a phone, the difference that made, because it's now in stereo. But if you have headphones on, you could hear a huge difference between this and this. I think it's kind of neat. Why don't we just go halfway left and halfway right with these oscillators? I really like that, actually. I'm going to keep that. And if you want to save what you created in your synthesizer, that sound, you could save it as a preset, and then it'll show up in this menu here. So the way to do that in My Tie is just go over to this little icon over here to the left and store the preset. It's going to ask you to name it. I'm going to call it Steve Stereo 1. But you could call it some cool name like Bippity Bop Bitty Boop or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so that's the sound I'm going to use. I'm going to actually start recording a song while we do this, so you guys get the real idea of how things fit into a song. So that's the sound. So why don't I let me just think of what I want to play here. Okay, I got it. All right, so I'm going to just click a track here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 128. All right, I'm going to record it with with a metronome in there. Here we go. Yeah, do it something else here. There we go. So we have that recorded now. It's going to loop that. All right, it's interesting because we didn't mess with the oscillators. It's still a little plain, but that's cool for our first track. So now that we have that, I'm not going to add any drums or anything just yet. I'm going to still continue to mess with that sound. Okay, phase 1 complete. We learned what an oscillator was. That's what it sounds like. We recorded that track. Cool thing to do in your synthesizer, or actually what a lot of synthesizers do after the oscillated sound has been created, your tone has been created by the oscillators, is to now manipulate that in some way. Change it in some way, alter it in some way, basically F with it. Another word for manipulate is F with it in some way. And a lot of times, a synthesizer will feed what's coming out of the oscillator into this center section here, which is called a filter. Now, a filter does just what it says. Like a coffee filter filters out coffee grounds from water, this filter takes something out of the sound from the oscillators and leaves you with something that's been filtered, a filtered sound. That's why it's called a filter. And this big knob here basically shows how much you're filtering it. Most of the time, these filters the default setting is, because you might be asking, well, what do you filter out of the sound? Like, why would you do that? Don't you want to have a nice, pristine sound? Why would you filter something out of it and make it sound less good? Well, because it sounds cool sometimes when you do that. Check this out. This filter basically takes the treble, the high parts of the high frequencies of the sound out as you turn the knob down. And as you turn the knob all the way up, it keeps all the high frequencies. So you can see this knob's all the way up. It's basically playing the pure sound that's coming out of the oscillators. But when I turn it, listen to how it sounds. Hear that? I'm going to turn it back up. Now watch what happens when I move it quick. So you can see why people have fun with filters. It makes cool noise. Or it makes a cool sound when you turn it slow, when you turn it fast, different things. Okay, so that's what a filter does. So what I'd like to do maybe is I'm going to create 4 of these patterns here in a row. And I'm going to take the filter, I'm going to start it off low, and I'm going to bring it up high. So check this out. Okay, cool. Now, see, I actually was turning the knob slowly as I did that, and that's cool. But here's the fun part. Because we have computers, and I don't have 7,000 hands, if I wanted to do that mid a song and record me turning the knob, I mean, it could be kind of a pain in the butt. I could manually turn the knob and record that. But there's a neat thing in your music software called automation, where you can automate the knob turning of the filter so it does it automatically through the song. It's really cool, and it's really easy in Studio One. Check this out, and you'll see what I'm talking about. If I right-click on this knob, you see this little section that says automation? What I basically want to do is automate that filter. And let me just clear up one more term, actually, because it did pop up. You know how I talked about what filter does and it takes out frequencies? That's why that's why the name of this one is called cutoff, because it's cutting off some frequencies. So if you ever hear the term cutoff filter, it's basically this thing. It's like it's a filter that's cutting off certain frequencies of sound as you are turning it. So that's all that this word cutoff means. So whenever you see cutoff, just think of it's cutting off certain frequencies, okay? And it's a filter. It's a cutoff filter. Okay, simple. Excuse me. So if we right-click on the cutoff filter and we go to automation, basically the only thing we need to pick here, and there's only one option that's lit up, we want to edit the automation of the cutoff filter. Click it. It puts a little green dot here. But what is more important is if we look at our project now, we have this thin blue line that's going through our track now. It's not green anymore or blue. It's got a little, it's darkened out. It's got a little blue line. What is that blue line? That's the same thing as what this knob is doing. Watch this. If I pull that line down, you see what's happening to the knob, the cutoff filter knob? This is just a visual representation of what that knob is doing at a certain point in the project. So when I clicked on the line, it made a little dot. I'm just going to take that dot, I'm going to drag it to the beginning of my project. I'm going to start it right about in the middle there, and I'm going to release it. And then I'm going to click at the end over here, make another dot, bam, and I'm going to raise that dot to the top. You know, you see that slanted line? That's what the cutoff filter is going to do now in the project while it's playing. Check it out. You see the knob moving slowly, automatically? My hands are off. You know what? There's a little bit of clipping there. I'm sorry. You see how this went into the red down here? That might be why you're hearing a little bit of static. That means we're a little too loud, coming in a little hot. So I'm just going to flip down here the master volume just a bit. And let's see if that static goes away. Good. All right, so the static did all go away. That's because our master volume was cranked a little too much. And if you go into your mixer, you could see, like watch, we're at negative 5.4 now on our master volume. It was at 0. And so when this thing was going here, you see that 48? That's how much into the red we went. That's too far. Or anything over 0 in the red is too far. I'm just going to throw this little device on the end, though, called a limiter, which will stop it from going into the red from here on forward. We could go over that later, but it's a little fail-safe thing I did there. Okay, cool. So we have the synthesizer now being automated and playing. Now there's one other thing I want to do to it, and that you can do to your synthesizer. To me, it still sounds a little plain. Let's add some effects to it. So open up MyTi again, and then scroll down here to where it says Reverb, and click that. And let's pop that mix up a little bit, and let's hear how this sounds. Now we got this like church-like organy sound. It's pretty neat, right? And maybe make the size a little bigger too. It stopped. Whenever I move my mouse off the screen, the music stops. Sorry about that. Okay, good. So far so good. All right. We basically made a song from scratch using different waves. We made a square wave into a cool organy sounding synthesizer. That wasn't that hard, was it? I mean, all we did was we turned on both oscillators. We made them both square waves up here. And we just adjust the fine tuning between them, just a little notch. Then we cut off the frequencies with the cutoff filter to make it sound organy and church organy. And then it went higher and higher until it sounded just real bright. And we added some reverb. That's pretty cool. I like that. I like the way it sounds. All right, so now that we have that, let's pull in another synthesizer and just make a bass line out of it. So let's pull in MyTi again, and let's use one of the presets inside MyTi. And this is what you're probably going to be doing most of the time. I don't typically design all my sounds from scratch, but you can if you want. But I'm not technically like a sound designer. I'm more of see, you don't have to be a sound designer and like know how to manipulate all the knobs on this thing. I do it because I wanted to show you some of the basics, just so you have a fundamental understanding, but you don't need to. So I'm going to pick a a bass here, like what's 80s funk bass? And I'll show you me playing it on my synth. All right, I'm going to hit left or right up here. I'm going to cycle through some of these bass notes and see if we can find a cool bass that we like. It's not bad. Huh. Let me play the organ and the bass at the same time, and the first track. Let's play the first track and then me play the bass at the same time and see how it fits, if they fit together. No idea what happened, but something got a little upset with me. Did you see that frowny face? That's weird. Something got really mad at me. How about this one? Okay, I'm going to use this stock one, the default sound in Mai Tai. It's a pretty cool bass sound. And why don't we record a bass line in there? So before I do that, you see how this is just showing that automation line and everything else behind it's dark? That's because the project's now an automation view where you could see all the automation lines you drew in. The way to turn that on and off and go back to normal mode is just what this is here. This little icon means automation view. And you turn it off, and it goes back to normal. You turn it on, you can see all your automation. So I'm going to turn it off because I want to play a new bass line track in here. And I'm going to do turn the metronome on so I can hear what's going on, and here we go. All right, that's all I'm going to do. And I'm just going to repeat that 4 times. Boom, boom, boom. All right, now I can turn off the metronome. So here's our bass line. All right, pretty simple, right? And it's cool. We didn't have to really do too much with that. And we have a pretty good bass sound in there. So I'm going to show you some things that are like the next step in the synthesizer. Since we covered oscillators and filters, I'm going to show you the next step that will allow you to manipulate or F with your sound even more. Let's open Mai Tai up on the bass synthesizer we just created. And since we covered this section and since we covered this section, we are now over to this section here on the right. And I want you to look at the top right. And you're going to see this in synthesizers. And these are the 3 biggies, the things I showed you. Oscillators is one biggie. Filters is another biggie. And then envelopes is the new thing I'm going to teach you. What is an envelope? Well, when you think of an envelope, you think of like something you put paper in and you mail it off. Well, another definition of envelope is the edge of something. Like, did you ever hear like a pilot go, man, you're pushing the envelope, or he's flying right on the envelope? That's the outside edge of something is an envelope, which would also explain that's a thing you put letters in. If you think about it, it's the same thing. It's this thin an envelope is a thin piece of paper along the outer edge of whatever you're trying to mail. It's the envelope. In synthesis and synthesizers, there's always envelopes, and it allows you to take your sound and do certain things to it, okay? This one at the top is called an amp envelope because it adjusts how much amplification you're manipulating here in your sound. Amplification meaning volume. It's the same thing. Volume envelope. You can call it volume. So we have an amp envelope. An amp raises the volume, and an envelope is how much you're basically raising that volume, the outward edge. I wish I was on this screen so you could see what I was kind of talking about. Sorry about that. So an envelope is an outer edge of something. See my hand? Okay, so we have an outer edge of the sound, and we could use this to manipulate the sound. Like, now, what do you mean, Steve? An outer edge and the sound, it doesn't fit together. Well, okay. Well, look at this. Look at this envelope here. Picture this line as the outer edge of the sound. Okay. You have this A here, and A stands for attack. It's how fast the sound starts. Right now, our bass line has a really sharp attack. In fact, it's straight up and down. The attack is this piece on the far left of the screen here that my mouse is on. So listen to how the envelope sounds when it's really low, or how the attack sounds when it's really low. Now listen what happens when I raise the attack of the bass. You hear how it's taking longer now. You have this curve where it's trying to get to the top, and I'm not letting it get to the top. It's taking its time. So it's a slow ramp to full volume. And picture this at the top. This part is full volume. So if you want to get to full volume, you could either do it super fast, like this, and get a snappy sound, or you could raise the attack and make it a slow, rampy sound. It's not usually great on bass because you want bass to hit really fast, but on maybe the top synth, let's do it on the other synthesizer. Let's raise the attack on our original synth. And let's play that and mute the bass. It's more soft. So it works. It works for an organy sound like that, but for a bass, not so much. So let's put the attack back where it was, and now let's go to the very end here and adjust what's called the release. A release is how long it takes for the sound to stop ringing out, and this is how that sounds. Hear how long it's going when I hit stop? The release is maxed out there. So watch what happens when I bring the release back. That's a medium release. And if I'd go all the way to the left, check out this release. I'm going to open the release up a little bit. Hear the difference? Now, this bass line does have delay and reverb on it, two of these effects. So that's changing the sound a little bit. It was a cool preset, and they had them built in. Oh, you're not even seeing my screen now. Darn it. It just sucks. I hate when I do something pretty good and you guys don't see it. All right, let's go back. I'm not going to edit this out either. That was educational. Okay, so let me just show you what the release looks like where you can actually see it now instead of me just talking about it and waving my hands around. All right, check it out. Here's release all the way to the left. And here's release opened up really high all the way. See, hear it ringing out way too much? So you want to find a happy medium, something that sounds pleasing. Because you could be asking yourself, well, how do I know how much to put where, Steve? Like how do I know how much release to give it? How much this, how much that? Whatever sounds good. Any of these things, whatever sounds good. And let me make this point again. I do it every course. There's no rules. You can't break this stuff either. It's impossible to break. You can't turn a knob and break the whole program or your whole song. And two, there's no rules. Do whatever sounds good to you. Experiment. That's how great music is going to be made. Some people might argue with me about that. Like traditional music teacher, he might be like, no, frequency of 440 hertz must go into 443 or something I don't even know. All I know is the guys that really crush it in music are innovators. Be original. Create stuff. break the rules. As long as it sounds good, it's good to get. We're good to go. And hopefully, what you think sounds good will sound good to most of the people you're trying to play your music to. Okay, back to learning here. So find a spot in the release that you're happy with here. Cool. All right, so that's all we're going to cover in the amp envelope. This other stuff, you can mess around with those knobs and create something on your own there, no problem. There is a second envelope too here. Not going to go too deep into this, but I want to show you what this sounds like. This envelope is basically messing around with the cutoff filter. So watch what happens when I just pull this middle knob down. You're going to hear a difference in the sound. This is actually called decay. And it's basically screwing around with that middle filter, the filter knob. It's basically letting the knob kind of go like a wank, 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 wank. It's like you're turning it up and down really fast. It could get complicated how this ties to that and how I adjust that and all that, but blah, blah, blah. But all I'm telling you to do is every once in a while, you can come down here to decay and envelope 2, pop it up and down, and you might get some pretty cool sounds. Like, I like a real plucky sound like that, to be honest. I think it's cool. I think that's cool. That's more my style. How does it sound with the reverb? All right, let's keep the reverb on. How about with the delay? Neat. So we have a cool new bass sound. Let's compare it to the original sound. That's the original sound. That's how what we created it into. This is the first time I ever clicked that compare button, by the way. I didn't even know that was there, but that's badass. So if you ever want to compare with the sound that you're making to the original sound, click that button. I like that. And let's hear how it sounds with the other instrument playing. Neat. All right, sounds pretty good. It needs drums though. Let's see if we could find a cool drum loop really quick. I know it doesn't have to do with synthesis, but let's just go into files and go into our sound sets. And I'm just going to type drum loop and just see what pops up. Maybe something will just jump out as really good. I'm going to play the song while I'm searching for loops just to see how it fits. All right, I'm going to put that in there. And I'm just going to duplicate it to the end. And I'm just going to keep it kind of low, just to give it a little bit of flavor. And let's get a kick drum too. Nothing too crazy, just something to give it a little bit of oomph. Oh man, where'd it go? I like that one. All right, let's use kick 9. I'm going to drag that into the song too. And I'm just going to make it hit every beat. All right, now you got me warmed up now. So I'm going to make this into a full arrangement. All right, let's pick a snare. Okay, that one might work. Let's put this one now here, every other beat. You'll hear what I'm doing. And just duplicate that to the end. So it starts off, no bass drum, just some drums. Everything's fine. And then a kick drum comes in. Things are ramping up. Then we get a snare coming in. All right, just wanted to make it more into like a song. Pretty neat, right? Okay, let's do one more thing before we end off, because I think you're getting the idea about synthesis here. One thing I like to, let me color code the drums, because I like to know what's where. So I like to make my drums yellow. I like to make my basses red, I think. And blue is fine for the synthesizer. So let's pull in another instance of my tie. Right at the very top. Because this is going to be like a lead sound. So let's go to leads. Presets. I love to go to the presets and see what they have there. And then tweak my sound afterwards instead of just doing it from scratch. So let's do that. So oh, that's pretty cool. All right, I'm just going to play something in here. All right, I'm going to record it. All right, so I just got some stuff I played in there. I'm probably going to keep it. And let's manipulate that sound now. Let's go into the synthesizer and just start turning some knobs and having some fun here and seeing what kind of cool sounds we can make. We know how to work with the oscillator. We know how to work with this filter. We know how to work with these envelopes now. The only other thing I didn't go over are these LFOs. Why don't we do that now? Because these are another big thing in synthesizers. So, last thing we're going to go over is this term LFO. Sounds like another confusing thing, doesn't it? It's not. It's actually dark in here. Isn't it dark in here? An LFO, really simple, guy. You're going to love how simple this is. You're going to go tell all your friends that you're a synthesizing master now once you learn this stuff. LFO stands for low, so that means down here. Frequency, that's a certain pitch. No, that's a certain speed of the wave. A frequency is how frequent the wave goes from beginning to end in one full cycle of the wave. The frequency is how fast one full cycle of the wave happens. Like, check this out. If I go like this, stop. That was one full wave, and the frequency was how long it took me to do that. That was like 1 second. So LFO stands for low frequency, which means slow, oscillator, which means it's going up and down, up and down. So all it means is a slow moving wave. That's all it means. Low frequency oscillator. This would be a high frequency oscillator, really fast. Low frequency is slow. So it actually could get very fast, but it's not fast enough to make a noise. That's the thing about an LFO you need to understand. Like, because these oscillators up here, they make noises because they're going so fast. A low frequency oscillator is so slow that it won't make a noise. It's like the analogy with the fan, the oscillating fan. It's not going to make noise because it's just oscillating too slow. But what can you do with a low frequency oscillator? Well, you could assign it to something and on the synthesizer and make that thing go really slow up and down. Like, check this out. I'll assign this LFO, which is moving really slow. You see that light blinking on and off? That's how fast that oscillator is moving. I'm going to assign this oscillator to, how about, I'm going to assign it to the tuning of oscillator 1. So let me turn off oscillator 2. And I'm going to assign this LFO to this knob. So this knob is now going to move back and forth at that rate, the rate of that light. So how do I do that? Okay, I was seeing if there was an easier way. It's not really an super easy way, but you have to get into this modulation section down here, this mods. See where it says mod A? This whole grid down here. Usually on an initialized patch, these are all blank, but because we picked a lead, let me initialize the patch. This way I could really show you. Initialize, bam, everything's blank. Okay. We have one oscillator. It's playing that noise. I'm just going to play that over and over. Okay, so now everything's blanked out. I'm going to turn on LFO1, and I'm going to increase the rate till that light starts blinking at the speed we want it to be. Like, how about just about that fast? Blink on, blink off, blink on, blink off. That's how fast it's oscillating. That's the frequency. So if I come to mod A, this one's already taken. That happens when you initialize the patch. But this one is not. All these things do, these little menus here, they allow you to assign one knob to affect another knob. It's actually super easy. Watch. Let me find LFO1 in here. Okay, LFO1. So now LFO1 is going to affect semi. So all we have to do in this bottom one now is find semi for oscillator 1. Oscillator 1, well, pitch. That's me. Semitones is pitch. So I'm pretty sure that's what that means. Pitch. Okay, so now this oscillator is screwing with the pitch up here of this oscillator, so it should sound kind of goofy. Oh, it didn't. It didn't. Here's why. You can now adjust how much of that oscillator you want to affect that pitch. You'll see. Watch this. See? All right. Watch what happens when I increase the rate of this oscillator. Crazy, right? Watch when I bring it down low. This thing's going crazy wild. It's pretty neat, right? All right, so to recap, all I did was I assigned LFO1. That's all this top level is. It's assigning. What do you want to assign? And then the bottom level is the thing you want to assign it to affect. What do you want to be affected by, the LFO? And we just picked pitch. I could pick something else here like pan, which now we're going to hear it in the left and right ear. If you have headphones on right now, you're freaking a little bit. It's going wow, 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 wow. What else can we affect in the oscillator? The level. So this is volume. and you could change the shape of the LFO, the waveform that oscillates. Pretty neat, right? Look, you guys just learned everything. Not everything. Most of what happens in synthesis on a synthesizer like this, you just learn. You learned what an oscillator is. You learned what a cutoff filter is. You learned what an amp or an envelope is. And you learned what an LFO is. Man, if you look at most synthesizers, you're going to see those sections on the synthesizer, and you're going to know what it does now. That's huge, because once you know fundamentals, you can build on them. And that's how things get complex and complicated. Nobody's so smart that they just look at something complicated and have no idea what the fundamentals are and understand it. People aren't just magically smart like that. They understand it because they built it from somewhere. You know, Tiger Woods' kid didn't get that good at golf from never playing golf. His dad had him play as soon as he was out of the womb. So he has fundamentals. So don't be intimidated by people who know about this stuff and they use all the lingo. See, that's another silly thing too. People went around using the lingo. Like, even though they know they're working with beginners, they'll be like, yeah, adjust the LFO, turn down the cutoff, and add some delay and reverb and modulation and blah, blah, blah. Man, just chill with the lingo. Lingo is basically what allows you to learn. If you understand the lingo from the start, then you could learn further. If you don't know the lingo from the start, you're going to get lost. That's why sometimes when I teach, I sound like Mr. Rogers, because I want to make sure you get the things at the very beginning before you try to get the things at the very end. All right, let's screw around with this lead. We'll try a couple presets on it, and then we'll end off. All right, so let's hit play, and let's cycle through some presets here on lead. Let's try that again, now that you can see it. That's pretty neat. All right, check it out. I was just screwing around with this knob while the song was playing. I can record whatever I do with this knob. All right, this will be the last thing I show you. Damn, guys, you know, you're always trying to drag information out of me. All right, so you see this little secret tip at the end. Secret tip at the end. See this little auto off here? Click on that and click right. Now, whenever I turn this knob, at least I think this is going to work. Whenever I turn this knob, it's going to write whatever I do into the track, so it'll play it again when I'm done turning it. Check it out. All right, it did work, okay? So if you hit right up here and you start messing with a knob while the song's playing, you don't even have to hit record. Check it out. It recorded everything I did up there, all the motions. So don't play your song again now or it'll erase the whole thing. It'll write over it. You have to change this back to, or change it to read. So it's going to read what you did. See, I love the colors. Right is red, which means that stuff's going to write over it if you keep it playing. Green is read. Okay, green, good to go. Green means go. So watch now. I'll play it back and watch the knob just do it all on its own. No hands, Mom. You get the idea. Fun stuff, right? Yo, I had a good time actually doing this video. So hope you guys learned a lot from it. We went into some stuff I wasn't even expecting to go to. I hope it wasn't too much. But the plus point is you can always go back, watch it as many times as you need. I basically showed you some cool automation tricks so you can do some hands-off action in your songs. All right. Enjoy. Send me your tracks when you're done. I want to hear what you guys are doing. Synthesize your faces off. Now, we just used My Tai in Studio One. You can get, like, almost every DAW comes built in with some synthesizers. And then there's all kinds of third-party stuff, too. Like, one of my favorites that I'm probably going to buy coming up soon is Anna 2 from a company called Sonic Academy. But then there's, like, a lot of people are using Serum, S-E-R-U-M, for a synthesizer. Sylenth, S-Y-L-E-N-T-H, is a big one. A company called U-He, U-H-E, makes cool stuff. Native Instruments has synthesizers coming out the butt. Just do a Google search for virtual synthesizers and be overwhelmed. Maybe we'll make that the topic of another video. But there's no shortage of crazy synthesizers out there. My Tai is what actually is called a subtractive synthesizer. There's all different kinds, but you'll see that when you do your searching. There's subtractive, there's additive, there's wavetable, and all kinds of terms. We're not going to go into them now. Don't assign too much to what I just said in your head and get confused. But just know there's all different types of synthesizers, different ways to make the waveforms, and different ways to make sounds. And some add things and some subtract things. My Tai is called a subtractive because the filter subtracts things out of it. I think that's why they call it that. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point, but I forgot about that at the end. There's no shortage of synthesizers to use. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next course. See ya.